Ilhan Omar thought the rumors were behind her until the FBI file resurfaced. Within hours, Trump spoke out. The Dodge took action, and the truth began to unravel. What started as whispers turned into a bombshell that shook Congress. And by the end of the week, her entire career was on the line. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe so you don't miss what they never wanted you to see. It started with a single sentence. One whispered phrase from inside the halls of the Dodge. The file's been reopened. Most people didn't even notice. In a week packed with headlines and scandals, it could have easily been missed. But for those paying attention, it meant one thing. Representative Ilhan Omar was back under federal scrutiny. For years, rumors had followed her. Whispers about her immigration paperwork, about her marriage history, about things that didn't quite line up. Her opponents called it fraud. Her allies called it a smear campaign. The media danced around it, not wanting to get burned. But now, something had changed, and it all came from the top. On a Thursday morning, just after 8 o'clock a.m., President Trump stepped in front of reporters outside Mar-a-Lago. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. We're going to start cleaning house. Fraud will not be ignored anymore, no matter how powerful you think you are. No names, no direct accusations, but anyone watching knew exactly who he meant. In the following hours, the Justice Department quietly released a memo, one that didn't make it to primetime news. It outlined a directive to fast-track denaturalization cases. Not just any cases, specific ones involving public figures suspected of lying during the immigration process. By noon, that memo was on the desk of every major outlet in Washington. And by evening, it had reached the inbox of every congressional staffer. Ilhan Omar remained silent. She didn't tweet. She didn't post a response. Her team declined interviews. That silence, more than any denial, got people talking. Then came the leak. An internal document from a former FBI agent suggested that the Bureau had collected substantial evidence years ago. DNA reports, family immigration records, even sealed testimony from former community members. The agent claimed the file was shelved due to political sensitivity, but now it was being dusted off. Inside Politburo Studios, producers scrambled to prepare for the evening segment. Omar's name was now trending nationwide. Twitter was ablaze with hashtags like #DeportIlhan and #FBILeaks. As the day faded into night, one thing was clear. This wasn't just another political headline. This was about to become a defining moment in American politics, and nobody, not even Ilhan Omar, knew how it would end. The next morning, the headlines weren't just national. They were global. Every outlet from CNN to a laser featured a variation of the same question. Was Ilhan Omar's citizenship based on a lie? At the heart of the controversy were documents that had been floating in the shadows for years. Immigration files, marriage certificates, a DNA test that had never seen the light of day until now. Back in 2009, Ilhan Omar had filed paperwork to sponsor her husband's immigration to the US. But that husband, Ahmed Elm, was allegedly more than just a spouse. Whispers claimed he was actually her biological brother, and the marriage was arranged to help him gain legal status. When asked about it in past interviews, Omar dismissed the rumors as Islamophobic and politically motivated. But the leaked FBI report said otherwise. According to the document, agents had collected DNA evidence from a relative in Minnesota that suggested a high probability of sibling relation between Omar and Elm. Not 100%, but close enough to raise alarms. Yet the file had been marked sensitive, shelved in 2016 and forgotten. Now under renewed pressure from Trump's Dodge, the file was active again. Inside the White House, senior advisors were already meeting. The administration saw an opportunity not just to crack down on immigration fraud, but to strike at one of the left's most outspoken progressive figures. Stephen Miller, the architect of Trump's hardline immigration policy, was among those pushing for aggressive action. "We can't look the other way just because someone holds office," he said in a closed-door meeting. Fraud is fraud. Ilhan Omar, meanwhile, still refused to speak publicly. Reporters waited outside her congressional office, hoping for a comment. She slipped in through a back door, flanked by aides, her expression unreadable. Her office issued a short statement. "These are recycled lies. We've seen this before. There's nothing new." But something was new. This time, it wasn't just speculation on blogs or tweets from fringe accounts. This time, the evidence was being reviewed by federal prosecutors. In Minneapolis, Somali American community leaders were divided. Some defended Omar fiercely, calling the investigation racist. Others quietly admitted they'd heard the stories long before she was elected. "We love her," one elder said, "but sometimes the truth is complicated." Back in D.C., Trump doubled down. In a brief interview on Newsmax, he made it crystal clear if someone got into this country by lying on their paperwork, they shouldn't be here, whether they're a janitor or a congresswoman. That quote made it onto every evening broadcast. The pressure was building, and the next step wasn't just legal, it was political. Behind closed doors, Republicans were preparing something even bigger than anyone expected, because what came next would shake the chamber of Congress. By Monday morning, Capitol Hill wasn't just buzzing, it was boiling. Republican leaders had drafted a formal request for a House Ethics Committee investigation into Representative Omar's immigration history. The letter cited the FBI documents, the marriage allegations, and the possibility of perjury under oath during her naturalization process. At the bottom of the page, 23 signatures from GOP lawmakers and counting. The document made it clear if the investigation found that Omar knowingly falsified her immigration forms or married a family member to gain an immigration advantage, she should be removed from Congress and referred to the Department of Justice for prosecution. Across the aisle, Democrats scrambled to get ahead of the firestorm. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeff called the allegations baseless and steeped in xenophobia, but some members of his own party were privately worried. A few had seen the leaked FBI summary. One member admitted off the record, if even half of "This is real, we're in serious trouble." In a surprising move, the House Oversight Committee, typically slow to act, requested a closed-door briefing from the FBI. They wanted to know what had been found, when it had been found, and why it had been buried. It wasn't just about Ilhan Omar anymore. It was about trust in the system. Cable news turned it into a circus. On Fox, it was called the biggest immigration scandal in congressional history. On MSNBC, hosts suggested it was all a political distraction, time to distract from other news. On social media, the divide grew sharper. Deport Ilhan trended alongside Defend Ilhan. Meanwhile, Omar remained silent. Her team released one more statement, a firm denial that she had ever committed fraud and a warning that she was considering legal action against outlets spreading defamatory misinformation. But behind closed doors, her staff was in crisis mode. One staffer confided to a reporter, "She's furious. She thinks this is a hit job, but she also knows the spotlight isn't going away this time." Then something unexpected happened. Speaker Mike Johnson announced that Omar's past would not just be reviewed by ethics. It would be publicly debated. A resolution was drafted to censure her and possibly strip her of committee assignments while the investigation proceeded. The resolution was scheduled for Friday. Reporters began calling it Judgment Week. In private meetings, Trump was reportedly energized. "They called us extremists," he said to allies. Now they're the ones scrambling. And through it all, the public waited. The questions had only grown louder. Did she lie? Was the marriage fake? Did the FBI really bury the evidence? But the biggest question remained unanswered. What would happen if it all turned out to be true? The clock was ticking, and the stakes had never been higher. On Wednesday morning, just 2 days before the scheduled House resolution, a name appeared in the headlines that nobody expected. Daniel Granger, a former mid-level FBI analyst, retired, low profile, no political history until now. Granger appeared on a podcast known for government transparency reporting and dropped what he called the piece nobody's willing to say out loud. He claimed that back in 2016 he personally reviewed evidence tied to Ilhan Omar's immigration file, including documentation suggesting a fraudulent marriage and a suppressed DNA report. "I read the memo," he said calmly into the microphone. The conclusion was clear enough to warrant action, but the order came down to pause the file. "We were told it was too politically sensitive to pursue." Within minutes, that clip exploded across social media. Granger didn't stop there. He went on to say that 2 separate agents had requested permission to reopen the case in both 2018 and 2020, once during the Trump administration, but that higher-ups still stalled the process. What made this different now? According to him, it wasn't about new evidence. It was about political will. The Trump administration had now publicly demanded follow-through, and with denaturalization cases being prioritized, there was finally room to move. The White House didn't officially comment on Gringer's interview, but Trump reposted a clip of it within an hour on Truth Social, adding only 2 words, "Told you." Reporters scrambled to verify the claims. The FBI declined to comment. Congressional Democrats fumed. Some claimed the whistleblower was politically motivated, but privately, even they were shaken. One committee member admitted, "This guy isn't Alex Jones. He's a real analyst and he's saying the Bureau knew." Meanwhile, Omar's office was quiet. No press releases, no tweets, just silence. That silence only deepened the speculation. By evening, new calls were emerging, not just from Republicans, but from independent legal scholars. Calls for Omar to release her immigration file in full. Calls for transparency. A former DHS official went on Fox and summarized the moment perfectly. If she has nothing to hide, now's the time to show it because the burden of proof might be shifting. And still, the most explosive part hadn't dropped yet. Rumors swirled that the DOJ had already launched a formal review behind closed doors, possibly even preparing a motion to denaturalize. Friday's resolution vote was still 2 days away, but something bigger was building in the background. Something no one, not even Omar, was fully prepared for. Thursday morning started like any other on Capitol Hill, but behind the scenes, the Department of Justice was already in motion. While reporters focused on the upcoming House vote, a separate meeting was taking place 3 blocks away at Main Justice. Inside a secure conference room, high-ranking DOJ officials were reviewing a classified dossier. At the top of the stack was a file marked Ilhan Omar Immigration History Review. Unlike previous investigations, this wasn't a rehash of old rumors. This was a coordinated legal review. According to sources close to the matter, the DOJ's Civil Division had quietly opened an inquiry into whether Representative Omar's citizenship could be subject to revocation under Section 340A of the Immigration and Nationality Act, a rarely used but powerful tool that allows the US government to strip citizenship if it was obtained through fraud or misrepresentation. The review centered on 2 questions. First, did Omar falsely claim family relationships on immigration forms? Second, was her 2009 marriage to Ahmed Elm a knowingly fraudulent union designed to manipulate immigration benefits? A former prosecutor explained it bluntly during a live segment. If the DOJ proves either of those points beyond a reasonable doubt, denaturalization is on the table. And that's not symbolic. It's legal action. Back on the Hill, word of the DOJ review reached select lawmakers. House Republicans viewed it as confirmation that they had been right to push forward with the censure vote. Democrats, on the other hand, felt blindsided. Several members huddled in Speaker Johnson's office, demanding more time before any public votes moved forward. But the Speaker wasn't budging. The American people deserve clarity, he told reporters. We're moving ahead. Meanwhile, the pressure on Omar was reaching a boiling point. That afternoon, she emerged from her office for the first time in days. Cameras swarmed her as she stepped into the Capitol building. One reporter shouted, "Are you prepared to release your immigration documents?" She didn't answer. Another asked, "Did you marry your brother?" She kept walking, head down, eyes forward. The silence said more than a statement ever could. Later that evening, a cryptic post appeared on her personal account. Just 6 words. "I will not be broken ever." It was retweeted tens of thousands of times within hours. Her supporters framed it as courage. Her critics called it defiance. Inside the DOJ, the review continued. No indictments, no announcements, just quiet movement. And with every passing hour, one question was becoming harder to ignore. What happens if the Justice Department actually moves to revoke her citizenship while she's still sitting in Congress? The answer was coming, and tomorrow, the House would make its first move. Friday came with a tension Washington hadn't felt in years. Security was tighter than usual around the Capitol. Protesters had already begun gathering on both sides. One group held signs reading, "No one is above the law." Another shouted, "Hands off, Omar." Police formed lines between them as chants echoed through the marble halls. Inside the House chamber, lawmakers filed in slowly, phones buzzing with updates, aides whispering behind them. The scheduled vote to censure Ilhan Omar was set for noon. No postponement, no delays. The resolution itself was direct. A formal censure based on credible allegations of immigration fraud and deception, and a call for the House Ethics Committee to launch a full investigation with immediate access to sealed immigration records. The gallery was packed. Reporters, staffers, and political strategists sat shoulder to shoulder. Cameras were everywhere. And Ilhan Omar, she sat in the second row, face unreadable, dressed in a deep navy blue hijab and a plain black suit. She said nothing as Speaker Johnson banged the gavel and brought the session to order. Republican lawmakers took the floor first. One by one, they laid out the case. The leaked FBI documents, the whistleblower's testimony, the Dodge review, the unresolved questions about her marriage, and the silence from her office. "This isn't about politics," one said. "This is about honesty, about whether a member of Congress cheated the system and used that fraud to gain power." Another added, "We're not judging her faith. We're judging her paperwork." Democrats fired back. They accused Republicans of turning immigration into a weapon, of pushing unproven accusations as fact, of feeding into Islamophobia and xenophobia for political points. "This vote is a stain," one Democrat said. "We've entered an era where innuendo is treated like evidence." But then came the most powerful moment. Omar stood. She walked to the podium slowly and spoke into the mic, calm, measured. "I came to this country as a refugee," she began. "I built my life here. I became a citizen. I ran for office because I believed in the promise of this nation." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't plead. "I know who I married. I know what I signed. And I am not afraid of the truth because I have lived it every day since I stepped off that plane." Then she returned to her seat. No outburst, just silence. The vote was called. 212 in favor of censure, 202 against, 11 abstained. The resolution passed. Omar stood once more. She didn't react. She didn't speak. She simply walked out of the chamber, flanked by aides, ignoring the questions shouted behind her. Outside, the protests grew louder. Inside, the Capitol fell quiet, and across town at Dodge headquarters, the review file on Ilhan Omar remained open because while Congress had cast its vote, the Department of Justice was preparing for something much bigger. Saturday morning broke quietly. No sirens, no alerts, just a single press advisory from the Department of Justice. Attorney General to deliver brief remarks at noon regarding citizenship enforcement. That was all it said. No mention of names, no context, but no one had doubts. By 11:45 a.m., reporters and camera crews were already positioned in front of the Dodge press room. Every major network went live. Anchors spoke cautiously, repeating legal terms like denaturalization statute and material misrepresentation. At exactly noon, Attorney General William Hardin stepped to the podium. He didn't waste time. "In recent months," he began, "the department has restructured our Civil Division's citizenship fraud review. Today we're announcing a new case officially under review pertaining to public concerns raised about the naturalization process of a sitting member of Congress." No name, but he didn't need to say it. "In accordance with federal statute," he continued, "if it is found that a person obtained citizenship through deliberate and willful misrepresentation, such as falsifying familial relationships to gain immigration benefits, that citizenship can be lawfully revoked. We will follow the evidence wherever it leads." The room erupted. Immediately after the announcement, Dodge confirmed to select reporters that Representative Ilhan Omar's case had been escalated from a preliminary review to a formal investigation. That meant prosecutors would now have subpoena power. They could pull sealed records, interview federal agents, even request DNA confirmation. And then came the final blow. Dodge had already issued a request for Omar's complete naturalization file from the Department of Homeland Security. It was no longer speculation. Omar's citizenship status was officially under federal review. At the Capitol, the response was swift. Speaker Johnson called it a victory for the rule of law. Progressive Democrats called it an unprecedented political attack on a woman of color. And the White House, Trump posted just 3 words: "Fraud has consequences." Meanwhile, Omar held a private meeting with her legal team. Her attorneys issued a statement that afternoon calling the Dodge action baseless, retaliatory, and designed to distract from real national issues. But even they admitted behind closed doors that the scope of the case was expanding. One senior counsel put it plainly: they're not just reviewing her paperwork, they're building a timeline. And that timeline included the marriage to Ahmed Elm, the green card he received, and the conflicting affidavit given during Omar's past divorce filings. Outside her home in Minneapolis, cameras waited. She didn't appear. Inside the Dodge, more subpoenas were being drafted. And for the first time since the story broke, there was real legal momentum. What started as a whisper inside a federal office was now threatening to undo the career of a sitting congresswoman. Monday morning brought something nobody expected. A former member of Ilhan Omar's extended family, whose identity was kept confidential for protection, agreed to speak under oath to federal investigators. He was flown to Washington under tight security, escorted through a side entrance at the Department of Justice. His testimony lasted nearly 3 hours. According to a Dodge source, the witness provided a detailed account of the family structure back in Somalia, confirming that Omar and Ahmed Elm shared the same biological father. He also claimed the family had internally discussed the marriage as a necessary favor to help Elm immigrate to the United States. The witness even named a specific relative who had helped coordinate the paperwork overseas. This wasn't just hearsay. The man backed up his claims with documents, photographs, school records from Somalia, even an old family chart with names and dates matching immigration forms. Prosecutors now had something solid, first-hand testimony that aligned with earlier suspicions. By afternoon, the FBI re-entered the case. The Bureau dispatched a unit to verify the Somali school records and explore financial ties between Omar and Elm during their years of marriage. If they lived separately, filed taxes separately, and never shared property, it would strengthen the argument that the marriage was fraudulent from the start. Meanwhile, Congress remained divided. Several Republicans now called for Omar to be removed from office entirely, not just censured. One even suggested she should be temporarily suspended from voting on legislation while under federal investigation. Democrats pushed back, warning that punishing her before the investigation concluded would set a dangerous precedent. Let the legal process play out, one said. If she's guilty, she'll face consequences, but we don't remove people for accusations. But public opinion was already shifting. A national poll released that evening showed that 58% of likely voters believed the Dodge should proceed with full investigation into Omar's immigration history. Among independents, that number climbed to 64%. At the same time, conservative media amplified the witness testimony. One headline read, "Family member flips on Omar, feds have proof." Another claimed deportation was inevitable. Behind the scenes, Omar's legal team grew concerned. They didn't deny the man was related to her, but they argued that Somali families are large and complex and that cultural misunderstandings were being weaponized. They requested a protective order to keep further testimony sealed, but the judge denied it. Omar herself remained publicly silent. Her team leaked that she was emotionally drained and focused on her constituents, but people noticed she hadn't held a town hall or taken media questions in over a week. And back at the Dodge, investigators added a new name to their list, the translator, who filed Omar's original immigration paperwork. Because the next step wasn't just about who signed the documents. It was about proving intent. And if that happened, there'd be only one question left. Would the government actually revoke her citizenship? Tuesday arrived with a quiet intensity. No major announcements, no fiery press conferences. But inside the Department of Justice, something decisive had happened. A notice of intent. According to insiders, federal prosecutors had submitted a preliminary notice of intent to revoke citizenship, an internal document that signals the Dodge believes it has enough evidence to move forward. The document was not public yet, but its existence meant one thing. They were no longer just investigating. They were preparing for action. A source familiar with the case explained, once that notice is drafted, it means Dodge attorneys are convinced there was material misrepresentation. From here, it's about building the formal complaint. That complaint could be filed in federal court within weeks. Word of the internal decision leaked by mid-afternoon. Within hours, headlines spread across every platform. Ilhan Omar faces formal citizenship revocation proceedings. Dodge moves closer to deportation case. Cable news split instantly. On conservative networks, legal experts debated possible outcomes. Would she lose her seat in Congress? Would she be detained? Could she appeal? On liberal outlets, voices warned that the process was being politicized. One commentator said, "We're walking a dangerous line here. If the Dodge starts revoking citizenship based on paperwork filed decades ago, where does it end?" But the legal mechanism was already moving. In her home district, the mood was complicated. Somali American community leaders expressed frustration, calling the investigation an attempt to humiliate the entire refugee community. Others quietly admitted they felt misled. "We were proud of her," one elder said, "but if it's true, it hurts." Omar's legal team released a sharply worded statement calling the Doge's actions reckless and unconstitutional. They promised to fight any denaturalization attempt in court and accused the administration of staging a political takedown. Yet privately, the team was split. Some believed they could negotiate a settlement. Others feared that once the complaint went public, it would be too late. A revocation of citizenship, if successful, would trigger automatic removal proceedings unless a federal judge intervened. And the most unnerving part, the FBI reportedly uncovered an email exchange from 2009 between Omar and a relative referencing a favor for Ahmed and temporary paperwork. It wasn't a smoking gun, but it reinforced the claim that the marriage had been orchestrated. Back in D.C., a few Democratic lawmakers quietly asked Omar to consider stepping aside. For now, she refused. In a rare private conversation, she told one colleague, "If I step down, it makes it all real. I'm not going anywhere." That night, Trump posted a short clip of one of his old rallies. In it, he said, "They said I was wrong about her. They laughed. Now, who's laughing?" The pressure was unbearable, but the final decision hadn't yet dropped. That moment, the one everyone had been waiting for, was coming next. And when it did, it wouldn't just decide Omar's fate. It would redefine the future of immigration enforcement in America. Wednesday morning began like every other in Washington until a sealed court filing was delivered to the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia. Inside the envelope was a 47-page civil complaint from the Department of Justice. The charge: fraudulent procurement of U.S. citizenship. The defendant, Ilhan Omar. By noon, the filing had been unsealed. The document laid out everything: dates, names, transactions. It included sworn testimony, immigration documents, and most damning of all, a digital copy of an old email in which Omar allegedly referred to her husband, Ahmed as "my brother," while arranging for his immigration paperwork. The email was dated 2008, months before the marriage was formalized. That one piece, combined with earlier testimony and evidence, formed the Doge's central claim that Omar willfully misrepresented her family relationship in order to help her brother gain legal status, and that she later used false information on her own citizenship application. The government wanted one thing: denaturalization. If approved by the court, Omar's US citizenship would be revoked, triggering automatic removal proceedings under federal immigration law. She would be ineligible to serve in Congress, and she would be required to leave the United States. The reaction was immediate. Speaker Johnson called it a moment of accountability. Senator Ted Cruz called it a new chapter in the rule of law. But not everyone cheered. Progressive leaders denounced the Doge's move as a political witch hunt. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted, "This is targeted. This is dangerous. And it's not about justice. It's about control." Ilhan Omar broke her silence that afternoon. In a carefully prepared video, she addressed the nation. "I am not afraid. I know who I am. I did not commit fraud. I did not marry my brother. And I will fight this case to the very end, because this isn't just about me. It's about what kind of country we are becoming." She looked directly into the camera. "They want to erase me, but I'm still here." The video went viral. Supporters rallied, but the court date was already set. In just 3 weeks, Omar would stand before a federal judge to defend her right to remain in the country she had served. For the first time in modern US history, a sitting member of Congress faced removal on the grounds of citizenship fraud. It wasn't just about policy anymore. It was about identity, truth, and the fine line between justice and politics. And as the country braced for what would surely become one of the most watched trials in American legal history, the rest of the world watched too, wondering if the nation built by immigrants was about to deport one of its own.